There's still people left and awake after lunch. That's good. I was at Oak Ridge National Labs 2 weeks ago giving a talk on digital manufacturing, focusing on the workforce. You know, what do we need to do to have digitally intelligent people building the factories and working in the factories of tomorrow? Interesting talk, but you think at Oak Ridge all they do is work. I mean, it's a science lab for DOE. Pretty impressive group of people there. But the head of manufacturing said, not everybody works. In fact, we take vacations around here. In fact, just the week before, one of our electrons and one of our photons decided to go on vacation. And the electron said, I'll meet you at 8 o'clock in the morning, be ready to go. I'll pick you up. Photon said, fine. So at 8 in the morning, knock on the door. Photon comes to the door, walks straight out. The electron says, wait a minute, you're missing something. Where's your baggage? And the photon said, oh, I'm traveling light. It was Oak Ridge, you know. The humor in Tennessee is a little different than Northern Virginia. So anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about the future of cyber. And no more jokes, stick to facts. And the way we look at the future at HP is we do something called megatrends. And so we look at the trends in the markets from technology, from economics, and from society. They're going to drive markets in certain directions. And then that forms the basis of our investment decisions of where we want to pour our scarce resources, just like the government. You have to decide where you're going to spend your money. You can only spend it once. But where are we going to put that money? Most of our investment, and I'm talking billions of dollars, are invested in improving the cybersecurity of our products. Because if we're not the most cyber secure, then I would encourage you to buy somebody else's product that is. That is critical in operation not just of government, but of any industry. You know, and digital manufacturing that I spoke about earlier, if you went and asked any of the leading companies what's the biggest hurdle before people adopt digital manufacturing, they've got to be cyber secure. You can't afford to have your factory, you know, that's pumping out 100,000 widgets a day shut down for weeks at a time because of ransomware. You can't do it. You can't afford to have the government shut down because you can't get to a database or the cloud doesn't work. And so cybersecurity is important. And so there's 4 different areas I'm going to talk to briefly today that come out of some of our megatrend discussions. The first one's AI. The second is quantum information science. The third is supply chain risk management. And the fourth is back to workforce. How do you get a cyber AI trained workforce that's available for you or your company? So let's start with AI and the convergence of AI and cyber security. More and more, the advanced persistent threat is using AI systems to either do the attack, to coordinate an attack, or even to write the malware that will be the attack. And so if you look at the history, not that long a history, but long enough to have an evolution within attacks and within the protection and defenses. So you got an offense and a defense. It's like a sporting event. If the offense gets better, the defense has got to keep up. So years ago, we had virus protection, and you'd put it on a computer. Now, in reality, you get a network, you got to protect your printer just as well as you protect your computer. And few people put virus protection on their printers, but it better be protected because it's got all the ability to get into a network and cause harm that the computer does. But signature protection was the way we went about business. And you had some companies like McAfee and others that would look for a signature of a virus and say, we've seen that before, don't let it in. Well, that kind of morphed to realize that the threat was changing and writing new code every day. We've got a database of about 100 million samples of malware that is just produced on a routine basis by professional actors, and there's some pretty good stuff out there. And you can go to a dark web and actually buy some of this stuff if you want to hack into a network or into your neighbor, or hack into somebody's car and open up. There's a program for everything. Some of it works, some of it they're just taking your money. So we went from signature protection to machine learning, and learning samples and running training sets of known malware and what that is compared to what you have or what's coming into your system. And that was pretty effective. But the threat is getting better every day. New malware is getting better. So how do you detect something you've never seen before? So if you know what machine learning is, and I know most of you probably do, but the simple explanation is it's the dog and the cat. You got a picture of a dog, you get a picture of a cat, and you train the algorithm what a dog looks like in zeros and ones in the picture, and what a cat looks like. So when you get an unknown picture, you can have some idea, is this a dog or a cat? And hopefully with some degree of accuracy, be able to protect it. I mean, it's something that the human knows intuitively, because you've seen dogs since you were a little kid, or a cat since you were young, and you don't even have to think about it. You just instinctively know. So that's the future where AI is going in cyber protection. It's going from machine learning of trained data sets, and it's going to neural networks to work like your brain works. And so the next phase that we just announced last April, a solution that looks as a convolutional neural network. It's a nonlinear system, and a system that in the AI world is called deep learning. And I see more and more you're going to use deep learning techniques in order to predict what the next malware attack will be, and to recognize something that hasn't been seen, or a minor variation written by an AI attacker of previous malware. So that's kind of my vision of where AI is headed. It's heading to more advanced AI techniques to protect in cyber systems. So next, quantum information science. Most people, when they hear the word quantum, they immediately jump to the quantum computer. And I know there's some people from IBM here today, and had a good talk with them at lunch. And IBM's doing a great job using ion trap techniques, and quantum annealing, in developing quantum computer. D-Wave is another company that has a very specialized quantum computer for a very specialized job. That's not where the revolution is. And so put out for the present quantum computing in your mind, and think about the other quantum applications that can be done. So what is quantum? If you took high school physics, you probably studied something about it and probably heard something about Schrodinger's cats, which is a hard subject to define. If you had a couple hours, we could go over superposition, entanglement. You don't really need to know that. You can look it up on Wikipedia if you really want to study it. But the quantum system, it gets back to your electron and your photon. Electrons have different levels of energy, and depending on what that level is, you don't really know until you look. And when you look, you've probably changed the level if you actually measure it. And so the photon has what you all know through your sunglasses, a property called polarity. And so the polarity can be vertical, it can be horizontal, or it can be something in between. And so quantum information science is taking properties of very small particle or wavelets and being able to present or capture information from this. And so some applications that are coming in the future, in fact, this one that I'm going to talk about is here today, quantum key distribution, QKD. And it's protecting SCADA devices, or these things in operational technology, by using knowledge of the polarity of photons to create a key. And the way it does it is that you develop two photons at the same time that are entangled, meaning they have the same polarity because they're both created. And there are machines out there that can create a single photon. In fact, you can go to your high school science physics lab and buy one of these kits that'll show the kids in the physics class what a single photon can do with a photon detector. But these two photons will have the same polarity. You send them one end of a fiber optic wire and the other end of the fiber optic wire, and at the end of the fiber optic wire, you read the polarity. If it's vertical, count it as a 1. If it's horizontal, count it as a 0. And you can send a million of these down the wire in a short amount of time and create a 1,000,000-bit crypto key. And the reason it's valuable, because if somebody would try to tap into the fiber optics and read the photons coming through, it's going to change the polarity and you won't get a key. So it's unhackable in transmission. You have to be at the endpoint. And if you have physical proximity, well, do you really need a key anyway? But it gets rid of the public key situation. Another quantum effect is quantum sensing, and quantum sensing is used in what's called a SQUID, a supercool quantum interface device, to detect, yes, it sounds like a Navy term, doesn't it? But it's used to detect very, very small magnetic fields. And so for geolocation and geopositioning, if you're looking at, well, what if GPS goes away? Maybe you could use a SQUID. NIST is doing some very, very good work on how to get more accurate timing using a quantum device and a quantum sensor to tell time better than an atomic clock. So there's a lot of application there. The other areas are quantum communication. The Chinese are investing $10 billion a year, most of it going into quantum communication. And this is being able to do instant communication across vast areas. $10 billion in China, because they pay the researchers about 80% less than we do, is equivalent to about $50 billion in the US. Now that compares to what the NSF is saying in our budget this year of $447 million for US investment by the US government. So we're just getting started, and this field is going to take off. I had a talk last week with a small business in this area that is doing quantum memory. And quantum memory is going to change the way you store data. Now that's a year or two off at best, assuming that the hurdles they have they can solve. But it will change things. Quantum encryption and quantum resistant encryption, NIST is working right now. They had 70 algorithms that they started looking at. They're down to somewhere between 5 and 7 now. It's going to make a big difference in encryption. So let's jump to supply chain. Your products can be designed secure, but if you don't have a secure supply chain, who knows what condition they are when they hit the customer. So you have to know your suppliers, and that's not good enough. You've got to know who their suppliers are and their suppliers, second and third tier suppliers. Relationships are key and need to be understood and protected. So I serve as a voting member of the DHS Supply Chain Risk Management Task Force, which was a follow-on from the Secure Act that was mentioned earlier today, that was signed in December 2018 by the President. And it's looking at making recommendations, and 4 working groups are working. One is inventory. What are we doing now? What are best practices in supply chain to mitigate risk of counterfeiting, bad parts, or additional things put on a board? And so one's an inventory group of what we're doing. I co-chair the threat evaluation working group, and you think there'd be a handful of threats, or maybe 10 to 20 big threats. And so we have 120 members on the task force working group. We ask each of them to submit 5 threats they consider their biggest concerns about the supply chain. Now 5 times 120 gives 600 possible answers, thinking 90% of them are going to be the same. They weren't. We got 258 different answers. So there's just different ways to look at it. We didn't constrain it. Some are top level, some are very detail specific, but we're categorizing these in about 9 different areas. The other 2 working groups are original equipment manufacturing and qualified bidder list. What should there be? What should the recommendation be? And the executive branch will be making recommendations to the Hill probably in the August timeframe if the work of the working group gets done on time. The final thing I wanted to mention is probably the most important, and that's the workforce. How do you develop a cyber-aware workforce? The jobs of tomorrow are going to be different than the jobs today. Specifically true in manufacturing, also true in cyber. And one of the thoughts I want to leave you with is the junior colleges are going to have to pick up the workload. There are a lot of people, maybe they don't need a 4-year degree, but with 2-year knowledge at a JUCO, they could be cyber warriors. They could be proficient enough to fill the jobs of tomorrow. They're going to be created either in data analytics, which is becoming more and more associated with AI, more and more associated with cyber. And so I'm challenging the JUCOs, and I hope they will pick up the ball and that we'll see more education for the mass in the cyber field so we can economically stay relevant in the U.S. The second thing I've been proposing is that we want to watch the foreign language requirement that most 4-year colleges have. They would want you to take 2 years of a foreign language. I took German and took 3 years of German. I thought I was going to be an engineer and I need to read the technical papers written in German because Germany has so many good engineers. I think in the 43 years since I've been out of the Naval Academy, I haven't read a single German paper, and today I don't think I could. So my proposal is, let's make that 2-year language requirement optional, that you could take a software programming language instead. Instead of German, I wish I'd taken Python or R, or maybe C++. But learn the techniques and the coding methodologies in a classroom environment of a specific software code. Knowing that, you could probably teach yourself any other code and become proficient in multiple languages, but not spoken languages, but digital languages. So that's where I think we need to go from an education standpoint. And I thanks for your time. I'm going to wrap it up here. But I'm going to hang around when we close up in a few minutes, and if you want to come down and talk and give me some ideas that I can take back and put into next year's megatrends, be happy to do so. Thank you.